Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Surfside Recovery Podcast. My name is Brian Licata, and we just wanted to let you guys know that if you or anyone is struggling with addiction, to please reach out to Surfside. You can give us a call at 609-709-4205 or visit us at surfside.org and all of our social media platforms. All right, we're good. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Surfside Recovery Podcast. That's Ian Koch. I'm Brian Licata. That's Mrs. Licata. Hi, Mom.
Good morning.
Yeah, we got right into it. I don't think you expected that, did you?
No, that's quite all right.
So this is a very special episode. We're going to unveil live Brian's first tattoo with Mom
Oh
on
my
the
God.
air.
You wouldn't do that to me. Oh, no.
You want to show her?
No.
No?
No.
You sure?
Yep.
All right.
We'll wait.
All right, we'll wait.
She has
till
no
off
idea
camera.
if you're telling the truth or not.
I know she doesn't.
But actually, I'm getting to the point where I trust Brian.
Isn't that
So I
crazy?
trust
Almost
that he
3
does
years
not
in.
have-
We're almost there.
Isn't that
that
crazy?
he does not have a tattoo.
So I think one of the things that would be interesting, I had a mother reach out. So I think that was earlier this week. We were just having some general conversation. Her son is in Surfside right now, and she said that she was watching the podcast and really liked them, but she wanted to know more about the 12 steps. So I was thinking, because you participate in a 12-step
Right.
family fellowship, so
Right.
I was actually thinking this might be a really good idea or a good opportunity to kind of talk about. Maybe not so much like we can always go into like the depths of the steps at another point in time, but maybe like what has 12-step recovery done for you as a family member who isn't necessarily suffering from addiction and also has a son who's now stable?
Right.
Like, why would you keep going?
The reason I continue to work a 12-step program is to keep my tools sharp, because there may be a day when I really, really need them. Actually, I need my tools every day. The 12-step, initially, when we realized that Brian was an addict, I had to accept the fact that he was addicted to drugs and I was addicted to him.
So how long, when was tell me about your first meeting. That's actually really good.
The first meeting was really scary. It was in Cherry Hill.
And how long
in
ago
February
was that?
of, I have a note here actually, because I
we
had to
were
think about
talking
this.
about that the other
February
night.
2012,
Okay.
when Brian first went into rehab.
And you got sober in 16?
17.
April of 17.
I guess she answered that faster than you
Uh-huh.
did.
Yes.
She answered that faster than
Yeah.
you.
I got to think about it sometimes. I'm
Well,
like April
and
16,
so,
17.
A lot of people come into the rooms of a 12-step family program thinking they're going to learn how to fix their loved one. And so that's your motivation initially. And then you sit there and you realize, well, step one is I have no control over the addict. And, I had to accept that. But I had total control over myself and how I reacted to the addict. But I was as sick as my son, because every day, every waking moment was consumed with his addiction and him. And that's not a healthy way for me to live. So by sitting in the rooms and listening to other people share their experience, strength, and hope, I was able to realize, there's a path for me to have some kind of serenity in my life, even though I love someone dearly who's an addict. So by getting a sponsor and a 12-step program, the family program works just like the 12 steps.
So in
for everyone
theory,
else.
So in theory, if I went and I did it, if I was a family member and I picked up a book and started reading about step one, I would understand a little bit more of what my son was going through or dealing with.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the program that I participate in is really for me. It's not for my son.
So you don't learn how to fix him?
No, you don't. I learned through our own experiences about what we tried throwing money at the problem. We tried rescuing. I would say 95% of the help that we thought we were giving Brian
Didn't help.
Brian never asked for it.
Yeah.
2 times he's asked for help. Once was a call from California. Excuse me. And once was after you got your first paycheck from Surfside and you treated a whole bunch of people to breakfast and lunch and all that over the weekend. And by Monday, you had no money. And you called me and said, I need help. I do not know how to manage money. And I said, you're asking me for help? Because I was so far into my program, I wasn't going to jump in and help you without specifically being asked.
Did you ever read that book that I got you?
You never got me that book.
I didn't get you that book?
No, you gave it to everyone else, but not me.
Were you not working with us at the time? Was that when you quit?
I don't know.
It might have been in between when you quit.
I don't know.
That was last one.
I got my mom, though. You should see the way she deals with money. It's fantastic.
I believe it.
So anyway, we put the training wheels on the helping with the finances and then took the training wheels off, and Brian's got spreadsheets and everything else, and he needs no further help. But
he asked for it, and that's the key.
He asked for it, and that's key. And so, hindsight is always very clear when you realize that, you went and moved him out of this place or that place or moved him into this recovery house or that. Or he never asked. We just, as parents, jumped in because that's what we felt we were supposed to do. But then you start looking at what's worked and what's not working. The thing that's been most helpful is getting out of his way.
Yeah.
To me. But anyway, my program that I work and I continue to go to, it is a fellowship. I'm helping now other people who are new to the program whose addicts are in active addiction and they don't know where to turn or what to do. And I just share the things, my experiences, and you don't ever tell anybody what to do and what works. I just say, this is my story and this is what worked for me or for us as a family. But addiction is a family disease, and I, at the beginning, didn't realize that, but it affects everybody. It's sort of like throwing a rock into a pond, and the circles from where the rock hits the water, it hits the immediate family, and then it's cousins, and then it's friends and close friends, and it affects so many people. And I don't think an addict in active addiction realizes the impact their addiction has on other people.
No, yeah,
because you're so consumed.
I would agree with that. Definitely, you don't really think about what you're doing to other people. I mean, I remember thinking that I was just only affecting me and in my life, and you don't really realize.
It's like our family letters. So for those who don't know, we have a process, and it's not unique to Surfside. A bunch of different places do it slightly different, but ultimately the parents write letters talking about how the addiction has affected them to their kids, and then they read them. We get so many parents that give us pushback about those stupid letters.
Really?
Oh, what is he going to say? Oh, I can't tell him this. I mean, it got to the point where we've made some very extensive examples, very clear-cut directions. We have to edit them. We have to send them back and say, look, this is not what we want. We need an honest letter, not I've literally gotten short paragraphs that are like, oh, we love you so much. Your addiction has hurt our family. We hope you do well. You're such a bright boy. You have such a good future. And it's that's not the point of the assignment. And what it is that, I think when I was getting high or drinking, I was drunk. I don't remember what was going on.
Yeah.
And typically the addict will say, well, I'm only hurting myself. But the reality of it is that's not even close to being true, because they don't even remember the damage most of the time. The person that, is stone cold sober remembers the damage.
And, doing it over a process, over the period of time, I have found that I feel like I have some PTSD. I mean, there's some things where we're in crisis mode and excuse me.
Do you want some water?
I have some.
Okay. Did you make him sit in the car? Your dad?
No, he had errands to run or something.
I was telling Brian just earlier before we got started that there was a point where my husband and I were in Europe, and I had gotten a phone call from somebody very concerned about Brian. He was off the rails, and his behavior was erratic, and they felt fearful for his safety. So here I am in a hotel in Ireland, in the bathroom, at like 2:00 in the morning over there, because there's a time difference, thinking, okay, what can I do from this far away? There wasn't anything. All I could do was say, if he needs to go someplace, take him to a hospital.
Right.
I'll be home in 3 days. We'll call every morning, make sure he's going to work and I know he's alive. And when I get home, we'll see what's happening. But I knew that if he was actively using and he's living in our home, it would take 24 hours before I would know that.
Yeah.
Or less.
Right.
But, here I am leading a group over there. I'm doing a job. I'm trying to enjoy myself. And yet there's this cloud that's affecting me. It's affecting my mood. It's affecting everything. But, you continue to work, the 12-step program, and you come to a point where I just have control over my reactions to what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't control you at all. But, it's made me, I think, a better person. I think I'm a whole lot more patient, a lot more tolerant. I'm a lot more living in a moment. I am been a type A personality my entire life, planning, list making, structure and all that. And, when addiction comes into the picture, oh my gosh, all the tools I had didn't work.
Yeah, I think the fact that you went to your program for so long and then I started my program has made our relationship definitely better than it probably could have been. Like if you say, obviously if I got sober and you weren't going to your program, I think with you going to your program too has made our relationship much better.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that just like the understanding we both have for it, and I think it helps having a parent who goes to one of these programs because I feel like they can understand better than someone who doesn't. Right. Like of what we go through. And
it's also removed the fear. I mean, I think for most parents who are new to the whole addiction experience and just finding out their son or daughter is addicted, the biggest emotion is fear. You're afraid they're going to die.
Right.
And people live with that for years and years and years, but the fear's gone out of my equation. Working a 12-step program, I have surrendered and to a higher power, and I believe a higher power will take care of me, and Brian has a higher power that'll take care of him. And if the worst thing, and some people think death is the worst thing, but I honestly think being an addict in active addiction is living worse, hell on earth. It's absolute hell on earth.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that.
So for some people, I think to remove them from that hell, sometimes God's will is that the person
doesn't
succumbs.
have to suffer any. Yeah, it doesn't have to suffer.
Then they're out of
longer.
the suffering. But you know what? There was a long time that I lived in fear until. I'd come home and you can see how ratty my book is. I read these readings about turning your fear into faith. And I have faith that whatever's going to come down the road, not just with Brian, but in my life, with my friends, my family. I have a dear friend who's very ill right now. I just know that I'm going to be given the strength I need to handle whatever's coming. Mm-hmm. And that's where my peace and serenity is.
And I think too, I think families get so caught up and don't understand the difference between helping and enabling.
Oh, 100%.
And we had a guy slated to come in. He drank at the partial care program he was in 5 days before he left. The facility never told the family, nor did they kick him out.
Did they tell you?
No. Okay. He pulled the releases. So they weren't allowed to tell anyone, but they kept him, which I think is dirty as dirty can be. He went home, overdosed. Mom was not going to tell us. Was going to admit. I mean, you know what I mean? This is just crazy. It was he was going to admit. Mom was afraid that we wouldn't admit him if we knew that he overdosed. She didn't know about the drinking at the facility. I mean, just a mess of circumstances. And, we got the guy into the detox. And as I've been talking to this poor mother, she wants so badly her son to do well. So badly. And she wants to, like yesterday, she was mad at the facility that he was at because he was sleeping, and she didn't understand. Well, he barely even used anything. Why is he sleeping so much? But he wouldn't tell her what the drug test was true on the drug test. And, and she was like really just, she was trying to be mad, but like for some reason, like as I was talking to her, she wasn't mad at him. She was mad at all these other circumstances, the ex-husband. And I finally said, like, your son is the problem. Like,
right.
Your son got drunk in a treatment center, didn't tell you.
Right.
Like, your son overdosed, you Narcaned him, and he told you it was a completely different substance, and you believed him. Like, your son had then used for like 3 or 4 days through the holiday and wanted to come in to our program with zero repercussions. Like, he's in the facility now, like, not allowing them to talk to you. That's him.
Right.
And it's just so crazy. And it's like, when I look at this whole 12-step stuff, like what we see, and I'm super familiar with the different, Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, Families Anonymous, they're all pretty much exactly the same. Some of the questions I asked was more for the person viewing, obviously.
Right.
But what I see as someone who's worked in addiction for 15 years is that, if we have 20 guys going to, we'll say AA, and we've got 20 family members going to Nar-Anon, at the end of 5 years, we're going to have 5 guys going to AA, and we're going to have 1 person, if that, going to Nar-Anon. The rate of which families drop out of Nar-Anon is exponentially higher than like AA, NA, and what happens is their son starts to do well, or their daughter, whoever it is, wife, whatever it may be, starts to do well. And that's why I said it was so cool, like basically cool that it's, he's almost 3 years sober and you're still doing this.
And I'll continue to go.
And which is all, it's like, look, I'm almost 15 years sober.
Step.
Yeah, I'm 15 years sober and I'm still going to 12-step recovery begrudgingly sometimes, but I go.
Right.
Right? Like begrudgingly sometimes, that's honest.
Yeah, there are other things
I don't feel like doing this tonight,
right.
But I go and to see that you're still doing that is really, really healthy. And, I wish more parents would do that. I can't tell you honestly, how many parents have said like, oh, I don't like that. And besides, he's sober now.
Do you see that a lot too? That people come and then go and then come and then go and come and go?
I see some of that they come and go, but you don't always know why they've left.
Sure.
It takes a little while to find a home group that's a fit. My Pittman group is my home group. I've been to Marlton. I feel very comfortable there. There was a time where I'd go to 3 meetings a week.
We have a graduates family who might go to that Pittman group.
Oh, really? But anyway, there's a gentleman in the Marlton group who's been involved in Nar-Anon for probably at least 19 years. My sponsor's in for 16, 17 years. So there is some long-term participants.
How many people at the meeting?
We vary from on a really slow or whatever, a busy time of year, maybe, maybe 10 to 15, 20.
How many people 25. Do you think were at that meeting I was at? What, 40?
Probably. We always get
an anniversary.
Yeah,
it was an anniversary meeting, but
40
my
people.
group's been in 33 years, which is really a long time because I think the fellowships of AA certainly have been around a whole lot longer.
70. Well, and so it's like, and I hear these numbers and I think, that's okay. But I'm also looking at the fact that like, how many, like if everybody went who should be there, like if there was one individual at that meeting for every one person at a 12-step meeting that same night,
right?
You'd have 70 people in the room.
You're right.
Easily. Every night.
You're right.
That's the thing that to me is like is so sad. And we see it at Surfside. We can barely get families to continue to come to our monthly family group after 2-3 months.
Some people don't buy into.
And some of you are watching this, and I think you're enabling your kids if you're doing this. But some, they know the group ends at 11, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so busy in the morning. We can't get there until about 11:30," and they like conveniently show up right when the group is over because their kid's doing well.
Yeah, but your kids, I have to stay in the day, Ian.
Look. Me and you are on the same page.
Okay. And this is what helps me.
Page.
And this is what helps me too, because sometimes I have these little relapses, and my husband will remind me, "Okay, you're projecting." I'm like, "Okay." He may not attend, but my husband has learned an awful lot through osmosis. For just what I have learned.
How can he not? Yeah.
Right. But there have been times too where, from the background and the work career my husband had, he was in law enforcement. So you go in, and you fix things. And he's a dad, and that's what dads do. Yeah. And that's not wrong. It's just that when addiction is in your life, you really have to do the opposite of what your maternal, paternal gut tells you, because that stuff doesn't work. It doesn't work. And there have been times where my husband has wanted to actually, and I don't think you know this, Brian, but Dad wanted to help support you starting your new business, and he was ready to run in and write a check and help pay for the equipment. I'm like, no, he's not asking for help. See, I believe that by not jumping in gives you the dignity of succeeding on your own,
or
learning, or failing, because with every failure, there's a lesson there, and so it takes, I think, a lot of strength to hold back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree.
And to not offer when I see, it's so easy to write a check, but that's not where the growth comes. Mm-hmm. The growth comes from you figuring it out, the financial stuff and how to pay the bills and how to do all that. To me, that's my gift to use by saying no. But coming from a 12-step program, I had to learn how to set boundaries, boundaries that were healthy for me. And so some of that was really difficult in the times when you were not in a great space, and I'd have to tell you that I can't go down the rabbit hole with you.
Right. Yeah.
Please
I remember
call
some
me.
of those
We'll
phone
have
calls.
a conversation on a day when you're feeling better.
Right.
When you're in a better space. But I also had to learn how to say no in different ways, because as a parent, it's very difficult to say no to your child. So I had to come up with things like, I'm not comfortable with that. Maybe another day.
Right.
And that I've shared with other people in the rooms, because it's very difficult to say no to your kid. There was a time we sat in the diner. I don't even remember that day. We were in the Berlin diner, and you wanted to come over.
I don't.
I was working on a project for work, and one of the triggers with us is when we're out and about at a restaurant. Brian says, "Excuse me, I have to go to the restroom." So that's history. That's our history, but that's a trigger for me, and I have to acknowledge that.
Mine is, "Mom, I'm going to see this band Fish."
Okay. Not a good scene, huh? All right.
Not at all.
Yeah. So anyway, Brian came back from the restroom and said, "Oh, do you think I can come and hang out at your house?" And I was looking at him, and it was clear to me he was no longer sober at that moment. So I said, "You know what? Not today. I'm not comfortable with that." But I've shared with the people in the rooms that once you figure out how to set the boundaries, once you've set the first one, the rest are easier to come. But the boundaries were for me, really, and for my health, and for my sanity.
And in default, they fall back onto him.
Yes,
and that's some of the stuff. Like some of the guys that families have listened to us, and guys who maybe have come into Surfside and said, screw this, I'm out of here, or some of the families that have followed our direction, and there's been families that we've worked with for 6-7 months before they were able to get their kid in, and maybe 2 treatment centers in between, and and some of those guys do incredible. I'm thinking of one, the little the skateboarder who works at the coffee shop. Mm-hmm. I mean, this kid, the funniest story, he was fed up, and he said, "I'm done." And I guess it was every weekend for a little while he would call Miranda and say, "I want to leave," and Dan would talk him off the ledge. And
who's Miranda?
Our program director, Dan.
Okay.
You've never met Dan.
Okay.
And finally one weekend Dan I don't know if it was Dan was having a bad weekend or was just tired of it. He was like, fine, go. And he said, okay. And he packed his stuff and he left.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? So he was gone for, and his mom was, oh my God, what do I do? Do I get him? And we're like, nope, leave him be. Just don't budge. So
That's
2 days homeless in Atlantic City. He calls Dan and he's like, Dan, can I come back? Dan's like, you got to call Ian. So he calls me, Ian. So I don't really know what to do. Should I live with my friend in Connecticut? I really want to stay down here to finish my step work. I was like, you're still sober? You didn't get high? He's like, no. He's like, I know where that's going to lead me. I just couldn't handle the structure anymore. It's like, why don't you just come back? I was like, what are you talking about?
He went on his little walkabout.
Pretty much. And he came back and he turned an amazing corner. And, he's now like, I talked to him for probably 45 minutes yesterday. And he wants to start a business. And, he's asking me like all these different things. And he's talking about going back to school. And I was, I kind of deterred him from what he was thinking about with school and kind of gave him some bigger picture things to think about. And, he's paying all his own bills and, he's doing the deal. And, and it's one of those things. It's like, and I have to, and Dan yells at me a lot. He says like, I'll involve you when you need to be involved. Because
that wasn't a bad impression.
Right. Because I get too involved with the guys, and when I'm too involved with the guys, then I can't focus on what my actual job is.
Right.
And so it's like sometimes like and as we've gotten bigger and have more guys, like I've had to really separate myself. We talk about like I'm in charge of what's on this side of the island. He's in charge of what's on that side of the island.
Yeah, very good.
And it works really well. But I see it. It's like, we do these emails. They're like nightly report emails, who's kind of what's going on, what happened for the day type of thing. And, you've sent 1 million of those, I'm sure, Brian.
Yep.
And I would like, God forbid I didn't fall asleep and I would like look at the email and see that like so-and-so's not calling his sponsor. And now I'm like, oh my God, what's going on with this kid? And 3 hours later, like I'm still wide awake wondering why Johnny isn't calling his sponsor. Right. I qualify for Al-Anon.
Yes, you do. You do.
100%. And I absolutely have post-traumatic stress from working in this industry as long as I have. So it's like, as I don't necessarily understand what it is like to be a parent, but on the flip side of the coin, I have 30 plus people in my care and 60
You're the
families.
parent.
And you know what I mean? And it's like I very much take on everything that is happening as my responsibility. And if one thing goes wrong, that is ultimately my fault. Because at minimum, I hired the staff that screwed that up. So by default, it falls back. And it's just the way it is. It's, it's like, it's taking responsibility. Some of it is taking too much responsibility.
Yes. Yes.
Do you know the total number of people that have come through? It's got to be 2 something, right?
No, it's about 170.
170.
All the data that we collected is at 160, and that was, so I guess maybe it's closer to 180.
Huh. Interesting. That's a lot of people. What were you going to say?
Yeah, well, I know. I mean, just circling back a little bit, I think that once I decided to take care of myself, my life got better.
Yeah, and I think at some point that helped me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I think once you started doing that, it enabled me to kind of, I guess, hit my bottom, I don't know, faster or something like that. I mean, I think that's the case.
I say this often in the rooms, is I had to make a decision that my happiness was not tied to your sobriety.
Right.
Because I realized, okay, I have less years ahead of me than I have behind me. And I really don't want to waste the years that I have and the day that I have worrying about something that I have absolutely no control over. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's really helped. I mean, I love you forever, but your happiness, I have no control over that. You have to create your own happiness.
Right. So what would you, like, kind of in closing, what would you recommend to somebody who, I guess, is either going through this for the first time, like stuff that you wish you would have known, or like lessons or something like that from the beginning?
I would say to get yourself into some type of a family fellowship group because you're in a room then with people who are living the same thing you're living, and nobody understands it like another person who loves an addict. I would get advice from people who knew a friend, and this is what you should do, and it's you can't. Nobody should tell you what to do. I guess that's kind of what I'm doing, is suggesting to people that you get into a fellowship where everybody in the room is going through the same thing, and then you don't feel alone, and then you can find your own path to serenity by working those steps. Not everybody that sits in the rooms works the steps either. They get to a point where you have to feel like you're ready to do that, just like an addict has to find the point where they're ready to like change their life and accept that the only way they can change it is one day at a time. I just would say seek support.
Excellent. You got any closing thoughts over there? No, he's got nothing.
When you think you're good, you're not.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd say learn the difference between helping and enabling.
Yeah. And I think that was probably one of the smartest things you said, or the best things you said, was that when he started asking for help. Because there is very much a difference between helping and enabling. And when he started asking for help is when things started to change.
Right. And really setting boundaries. I think that's key. And that was key in my recovery. It was setting healthy boundaries for myself and what I would accept as acceptable behavior. There's actually just the day before you got sober, Brian, he was out on a walkabout, and we had gotten a call from his employer. He didn't know where he was, and my husband immediately got in the car and started looking for him and making calls and so forth. And once he found you, he wanted to bring you home because you found a bed.
Yeah. It was I had to wait a day. She told me I could sleep in the garage, and I was not having that.
It was April. It wasn't that cold. I was going to give you a sleeping bag, but that was my boundary. Once, I had said many times.
We have to remember we're dealing with grown men and women,
yes.
for that matter. Like I just said to a mom, I was like,
I was 26.
Yeah, I just said to a mom, she's talking about her 23-year-old son, and I said, so once he comes in, make sure you take his bedroom and turn it into a guest room. And she said, oh my God, why? It's his room. I said, because he's a grown man and he shouldn't be living at home with his mommy.
It's so
like, you either want him to grow up or you don't want him to grow up. Right. Do you still have a bedroom at home?
No, he doesn't. And so my husband will say to me, can you tell me where, this jacket is? I'm like, oh, it's hanging upstairs in the guest room on the right. He goes, oh, Brian's old room? Well, it used to be Daniel's old room also.
Right.
So, you don't get the territory.
Yeah.
Sorry. But no, it's not.
No, and I think that's one of the things, like, my parents did it subconsciously, but when I moved out when I was 18, they had that room flipped into a guest room. I don't even know that I made it to Vermont yet. They had that room redone so fast. So it was never, like, me moving back home was never really an option. Like, I got jammed up in early recovery. I was about 90 days sober, and due to a set of circumstances, it was important that I moved home shortly, temporarily. But I wasn't allowed to, like, put posters on the wall. I wasn't allowed to, like, change the decorations.
You were a visitor.
I was a visitor. And I think, it's so many of our families, as they're trying to help their kids grow up, they want to keep this, like, child's bedroom the way it was, but it's like, you don't get it both ways.
Right.
You can't have a grown man that is a baby. Like, it's child or adult, like one or the other.
And there was a time through Brian's journey where my husband said to me, you mean he's never going to live here again? I said, that is correct.
Your dad's a trip.
But you know what? It takes different people, different lengths of time to accept certain truths. And so, because I was working a program, I came to those realizations sooner.
But how old were you when you moved out of your parents' house?
21, maybe. right after college. And I never went back.
What about your dad? Do you know?
He
Probably when you
moved
guys got
out when
married.
we got married.
Really?
Yeah.
He was what?
He was
22?
21.
21?
Yeah. So we got married early.
When was the
but
last time that I lived with you guys for like an extended period of time?
I would say 2014.
2014? So I was like 22 or 23.
Right.
Andrew, you got a guest room?
I sleep on a blow-up mattress in my dad's office.
Yes, the Beagleys are on point. Way to be.
Well, we have a 4-bedroom house and we have 3 guest rooms, so there's usually a bed somewhere.
Sure, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
But
it's certainly been a journey, and I don't. This is another topic, and I know we have to close, but I think one of the things people have to do is mourn the life that they had planned for their child. Because it's not up for me to write that script. It's up for Brian to write his script.
Very true.
And so, there's a whole process in the whole, you kind of grieve, what you thought you had, but then when you come out on the other side, in many ways, it's better than what you thought you were going to have. In many, many ways. Yeah. I think you're a more compassionate person as a result.
I think so too. Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast,
Yeah,
Mom.
thank you
I
very
really
much.
appreciate it.
Great.
There's a lot
So
of great
much to talk
information.
about.
I know, yeah. Next week we have Rogan, who I don't know who he
I
is.
think I'm waiting for him to confirm.
Maybe not Rogan. We're not sure. But
Maybe we'll have Beatley on.
Yeah, we're gonna. No, he doesn't want to.
I don't care. I don't care what he wants.
We gotta get Geisler too.
We do. Oh, we actually really should get him on sooner than later. Talk about our new recovery coaching stuff.
All right. I'll call him today.
We'll figure. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching. Bye. Love you.
How about the phone number?
No, we put it up at the end.
Put it
now.
up at the end.
Okay.
Put it 609-709-4205. Bye. See ya. As always, if you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to Surfside. You can give us a call at 609-709-4205 or get us on the web at surfside.org.